Thank you for showing your interest. The sales rep would get in touch with you within 24 hours.
And now the function should have been executed. So we'll see that, right? So here also you can see this service of lead is getting hit from Twilio in the debug logs. But let me go to the record itself and refresh this record as well. So you see this status got changed to working contacted. Hi guys. So now we are going to update the vendor's response from Twilio back to Salesforce, right? For which we are going to make a call out from Twilio to Salesforce and hit the standard API for updating the lead that we were working on, the sample lead, right? So for this, I've got an article from Twilio, right, which mentions accessing Salesforce CRM data within Twilio Studio. So this is the article that we are going to loosely follow, right? So I will give the link of this article in the description as well. But basically, these here we are going to use JWT token flow. So I've again jotted down the steps that we saw last time. Uh, Firstly, we need to create a self-signed certificate. Then maybe create a private key for that certificate. Create the connected app on Salesforce side. And now once we have the credentials that we need to consume on Twilio side, then we'll write a Node.js function to kind of hit the API, standard API of Salesforce, and then invoke this function from the Twilio flow that we have. Right. So this is going to be a slightly longer process, but just stick with me and we'll go through step by step, and you should be able to follow through the process. Right. Now the first thing that we need to do is create a self-signed certificate in Salesforce. Right. So let me go to Salesforce and type in certificate and key management. Right. So here you can just click on create self-signed certificate and type in as Twilio self-signed or any name that you would like, right? And change this to 4096 maybe. So this key size depends on the expiration date of the certificate. So 2048 key size will give you 1 year of expiration date, and 4096 will give you 2 years of expiration date. Make sure this exportable private key is checked, as we would need to export the private key from the certificate. Right. Once the self-signed certificate is generated for Twilio, you can just click on download and save it to your downloads folder. Go to certificate and management and click on export to key store. Right. With this, we are going to generate a JKS file, right, from which we would be generating the private key. So here we need to give a key store password. So you can give any password, but just remember the password that we are giving here. And I'll just give this the name as key store. This would be saved as key store JKS file in our downloads. Right. Now, once we have this, we need to go to the terminal and navigate to the folder where your key store JKS file and the certificate is present, right? In my case, in the downloads folder. So before generating the private key, we have to create a PKCS intermediate key, right? For which we need to execute this command. So which says that from this key store, create this intermediate file, right? And we have to give the password that we used while exporting the key store file, right? Now with this command, we should be able to see one more file here as intermediate, the intermediate file that we just set. Now using this intermediate file, we need to create the private key. Let me just grab the command for that. And with this pkcs file, we are going to create the private key that we would need and use the same password that we did while exporting the key store file. Right. Now here you should see the private key as well. Now let me open this private key and brackets. You should be able to see this private key. This is we are going to need this while consuming the service of Salesforce in Twilio. Right. Now let us go back to the document and see we have created the self-signed certificate and we have generated the private key as well, right? Now the next thing that we need to do is create a connected app, right? As we would need the client ID for the JWT token, right? So for generating that client ID, we would need to create a connected app as well. Now go to Salesforce, type in app manager in setup and click on new connected app. So we can use the external client app here as well, as we are following the OAuth 2.0 JWT token flow. I will just give my email address here, fill in the necessary details, distribute. Okay, we need an OAuth flow. The permissions that we need in this case are offline access and manage user data via APIs. Let me just grab callback URL. This is the standard callback URL that we generally use, and we need the JWT token flow here, and nothing else is required as we are not using WebSSR flow for now, right? Let me update the certificate that we just created for JWT token flow that we are going to use, right? For this, we would be also changing the OAuth policies for permitted users, right? We shouldn't allow, it is not a best practice to allow all the users to self-authorize. So we'll give a specific profile the permission of authorizing the JWT token flow, right? In this case, I'll just give system admin, but in production, it would be as per the users that we are using. We can also give the permission sets here, right? And just click on save. Now, this will take some time to generate the consumer key and consumer secret. I think it is generated. Let me grab the verification code. Wait a minute and type it in here, right, and click on verify, and we have got the consumer key as well. We'll just keep this handy, keep this open as we would require this while consuming the service of Salesforce in Twilio, right? So we have created the connected app as well now. Now the next thing that we need to do from Twilio side is all the work that is needed for accessing the service, right, in Salesforce is done. We would need the private key and the client ID. These two things would be needed for consuming the service from Twilio. So the next thing that we need to do is write a Node.js function, which would be used to update the data back into Salesforce and invoke that from our Twilio Studio flow that we just created. So for that, what we need to do is on the left hand side, you would be able to see the functions and assets that we pinned earlier, right? From there, just navigate to services and create a new service. You can give any name for that service. You can create a service. So once we create the Salesforce service and navigate inside it, we would get the capability of adding the function, right, that we were discussing to hit the Salesforce back to update the data. We can create that function over here. I'll just give the name as update lead and create the new function here. Let me just grab the code that we would need and paste it over here, right? So this is the code that we would need to hit Salesforce, right? We'll see one by one. But before that, there are some important dependencies of Node.js that we need to kind of install in this dependencies section. So if you navigate to this dependencies section, you would see few of the dependencies that we are using are already added, right? So you can refer this help article from Twilio that we initially discussed to see which dependencies that we need to add, and also you can see in this code as well the things that we need to add. Now the two things that we need here is to replace is the client ID and the private key that we generated. Right? So let me navigate and copy the consumer key replace it with this, our consumer key, and copy the private key from the file that we just generated a while back, and paste. Right. Now, these are just the variables that we are using to store the client ID and private key that we have generated. Right. And the first thing that we need to do is kind of get the access token from Salesforce. And using that access token, we can hit the standard lead API to update the status as maybe working contacted. Right. So as soon as we invoke this function from the flow, this would get executed, right? So from the flow, we would be passing the record ID and the Salesforce username, the record ID that we need to update, and the Salesforce username in whose context this record should be updated, right? So initially we saw while passing the params, we saw the reminder message. So the purpose of record ID and username is here now when we are kind of updating back the data into Salesforce, right? So which record we need to update and which username in whose context we should update that. Right? This is now we'll get the access token information using this method. We are using this client ID and the audience would be the SF username that we'll have, pass in the private key, and the grant type would be JWT bearer token. Right? With this method, we'll get the access token. And using this access token, we would be hitting the standard lead API and updating the status as given here. Okay. Now we have created this function. Let us deploy it. Okay. Let me check. Okay. One of the methods was not saved. That's why it was not allowing me to deploy. But we are going to use this update lead method. Let this get deployed. So the next thing that we are going to do is in this Twilio Studio. Let me, yeah, in this widget library, you would also see one of the widget as run function, right? So we would be utilizing this to execute the function that we just created. Let me see. Yeah, we have deployed and the name of the function is update lead. So let us see if we are able to see the function here. Yeah, update lead is our function. And the parameters that we are going to pass is, so we will receive this record ID and SF username from Salesforce to Studio, and from this Studio flow, we would be passing that to the Node.js function that we just created, right? So the key would be record ID, and the value would be, as we saw the syntax earlier as well, to access any variable or any attributes from the request body that is sent from Salesforce to here. We use this syntax as flow dot data dot the attribute name that we are sending, right? And closing this curly braces, clicking on save. I think we are good with this function, right? And after our acknowledgement message, we can execute this function and update the lead status as per the logic written here, right? So let me just go back to our document and see. We have written the Node.js function and we are invoking this flow. So now I think we are good with all the steps that we need to perform. The only thing we need to do now is execute this flow and see how the IVR works, and in turn how it updates the lead status in Salesforce again, right? As per the response from the lead. Now let me go to anonymous window and keep my phone ready for screen sharing. Yeah. Let me execute this line of code and share my phone screen on this. Right. So I've received the call. Let me just put it on speaker.
Account. You can remove this message at any time by upgrading to a full account. Press any key to execute your code. Hi, this is Astrolite checking in on your recent proposal. Press 1 if you are ready to move forward, 2 if you are no longer interested.
So I'll just press 1.
Thank you for showing your interest. The sales rep would get in touch with you within 24 hours.
And now the function should have been executed. So we'll see that, right? So here also you can see this service of lead is getting hit from Twilio in the debug logs. But let me go to the record itself and refresh this record as well. So you see the status got changed to working contacted. So as we saw in real time, we are able to kind of initiate an outgoing IVR call, and on the basis of the response from the lead via keypad inputs, we can dynamically perform any action and send back the updated data or reflect the actual response of the lead into Salesforce, right? Now, if something goes wrong here, right? If there are any issues, any errors came across, there is also a functionality in Twilio that we can refer as logs, right? So for each flow execution, there is a log created, right? So in this log, you can see all the details that happened in the flow, right? So if you see, this was the latest execution that we did. The rest, it was triggered by REST API on this date and time, and all the details would be present here, like what happened. We made a outgoing call, then we gathered some input, we made a decision, and then we ran a function, right? And you can see the details of each step also here in detail, right? So this is how we can utilize Twilio to kind of help the sales reps and automate any kind of monotonous tasks that they are doing in day-to-day life, right? Any of the follow-ups, any reminders that they need to do with the leads that they are chasing, that can be done via Twilio, right? So this is it for this video. Thanks guys, thank you for watching. Bye.